Okay, this is part 27 from Best of the West, Art, Movies, and Music, and by me, Pete Rogers. Okay, I'm going through the historians, and the reason I wanted you to have all these historians is I want you to be able to recreate everything in this book if you want to. So I've read tons of history, and I'm showing you the best historians so you can really quickly find out the truth. Because everything you're going to hear in a public school or on the midstream media, it's always going to be a lie. And there's a reason for that. And in order to turn you into a slave, they have to destroy your history and tell you falsehoods that make you think your history is a piece of crap, so you don't love your country and you don't want to preserve the truth about the founding fathers, okay? And for example, Abe Lincoln gets portrayed as some type of hero. The guy was a crook. He was a big jerk, okay? He gets portrayed, as the man who helped free the slaves. No, he didn't care about the slaves. He actively tried to get them pushed out of the country. He did not love the slaves, okay? He didn't care about black people. That later on was used as an excuse. What he wanted to do was rip off the South, okay? And he kept on raising the fees they would have to pay. And eventually they said, no, we're not going to pay that anymore. And he goes, well, then I'll come in and I'll take it from you. And that's what he did. Okay, that's what the Civil War was about in the 1860s. All right, and this guy, Tom Dilorenzo, here's the book, The Real Lincoln. He wrote about how evil it really was. Okay, all this stuff about preserve the Union, ending slavery, that's just a BS that came later. It was about stealing the money from the South and forcing them to do it. And, the South was stupid. They never really had a chance in the Civil War. They were outnumbered tremendously, like 5-1, and there was incoming immigrants from Europe all the time reinforcing the North. So they really had no chance, and the North was more industrialized. Okay, this guy Dilorenzo, he's also great when he talks about socialism and what a joke it is, how it's really just a Trojan horse for communism, okay? His internet videos, I highly recommend him. You'll see he is a very intelligent guy. He's like with the Mises group, okay? He shows how evil Lincoln was. The more you learn about Lincoln, the more you will hate him, okay? He deserves to be hated. He was a very bad man, all right? Okay, if Lincoln hadn't been around, freedom would have come very soon anyways. It was wanted by so many people. They didn't have to have a civil war and kill so many people, okay? It was coming very fast, and it would have flowed out better, okay? Christianity gets rid of slavery automatically. It just takes time sometimes. Okay, I know what happened in Ireland. My ancestors in Ireland were slaves of the British for like about 1,000 years. And they're still being you-know-what-sided. Ireland's just almost completely destroyed and gone. Okay, Edith Hamilton. She's a great historian about the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. She wrote The Greek Way and the Roman Way. And she also wrote a book about Greek mythology. She shows the beauty and the brilliance of the ancient Greeks. And in comparison, she considers the Romans a bunch of collectivist thugs, which they were. But you want to learn about both, because what you see in Rome is unbridled power leads to bad behavior, like Nero, okay, Caligula, Justinian, the apostate, okay. But she also tells you about the great ones in Rome, like Cicero and stuff. Okay, so Edith Hamilton, her and Rufus Fears are your best introduction to the ancient Greeks. Will Durant was a magnificent, prolific historian, and he did a lot of good things. I think he's a little bit of a wimp. He's a little bit too impressed by Voltaire, because Voltaire was funny. But he's still a good historian. He wrote sort of the story of civilization. He first wrote a book called The Story of Philosophy, and it was a pretty good book. But then he realized, wow, he could really do it all. He was a philosopher by background. He could write an entire story of civilization, beginning like with what he called the Oriental Age. And basically, before the ancient Greeks, all ancient cultures stunk. All right? There would be some tyrant, kicks everybody's ass, kicks everybody's butt, says, do what I say, or I'll kick your butt. And that's why they produced almost nothing. It's just a fact. All right. Then the ancient Greeks had some freedom, and boom, they taught themselves all kinds of things. And they began philosophy. They began science. They were rather incredible. Okay. So what is Will Durant? Will Durant's heart's in the right place. So he's trying to get to the truth. And he wrote, like I said, all these giant volumes. He went up all the way through the age of Napoleon. That's where he then he died. But he's like one of the most prolific historians that ever lived. And his wife helped him too. Ariel was a good historian as well. He did say that Voltaire was the greatest writer who ever lived. Voltaire was very funny and very clever, but he's also a jerk, and the atheism of the philosophes led to the destruction of France. Okay, so Will Durant talks about that a little bit. Here's some of those quotes. He says, Voltaire and the philosophes wanted to keep morality and get rid of Christianity, get rid of theology. But civilization depends on morality, and morality must be taught in childhood. For a child to learn morality, it must be taught with theology. The philosophes don't need religion, but the average man wants it. Religion tells him that life is meaningful. The atheism of the philosophes, of the philosophers, leads to despair for the average man, and that is true. Christianity says man is created in the image of God. The lowest man on the totem pole is still equal in the eyes of God. Atheism says, is really Darwinism, and it says survival of the fittest, okay? If you're weak, then you suck and you deserve to die. That's atheism, and people don't understand that, but that's what it's actually saying. And that's why you don't want it, because most people are weak, the vast majority of them, okay? All right, Will Durant continues. If we examine our memories, we shall find that what stirred us in our native faith was not a body of doctrine, but the ethics and the story of Christ. The challenge to behave as if all men were brothers. Like, Arnold Toynbee had said, the brotherhood of man depends on the fatherhood of Christ. Okay, and if you don't have that, the fatherhood of God, if you don't have the fatherhood of God, men will not behave as brothers. They'll form separate groups and they'll fight it out to see who wins. You don't want that. Okay, Will Durant continues. The challenge to behave as if all men were brothers. And the example of a life that lived up to this seemingly impossible ideal. It is difficult to imagine how anyone could improve upon this outline of a faith for the modern soul. Through all the adventures of the mind among philosophies and creeds, the figure of Christ remains the most appealing in history. Yeah, there's nothing like Christ, okay? There's a very good reason why Christianity is the most popular religion on the planet, like about 2.3 billion people, because it gets everything right about life. And humans run best on Christ. It's what makes them happy, what makes them nice to each other, makes them do good things, as much as that is possible. Will Durant, we do not need a new religion so much as a return to the old one with its essentials and its simplicity. All over the world, it's easy to interest people in Christ, but it's hard to keep them for the theological division of Christianity. Yeah, the Protestants screwed everything up because, they tried to, instead of enjoying, the Catholic Church came out at the same time as paganism. They coexisted with paganism for 500 years. They get along very well. That's what you want, to be able to get along with everybody. Then Protestant came in and said, Luther said, oh no, do it my way or the highway. The Bible's the only thing that matters, even though the Catholic Church existed for 300 years before that, and it has all kinds of good traditions and whatnot. And then it's like, do what I say or you'll burn in hell. And then everybody's like, oh, that's pretty miserable. And then they give it over to a secular ruler. Secular ruler ruins everything. So that's how Christianity fades out. And right now, Christianity is really weak. Even the Catholic Church is super weak. The Pope is an antichrist. The average Catholic priest is a low IQ, alcoholic or homo or something. And they don't allow they don't allow the good men in church, okay? They should be inviting me. They should say, oh, you wrote a book about the best of the West and history of Christianity? Come and give a speech at our church. Oh, you wrote a best Christian art, best Christian music? Come in and present for 10 minutes during Mass. How come they never invite any of the great men? Noble masculinity is not welcome in any of the churches. Now, the Protestants have much better pastors because some of them are intelligent guys who have to build up their congregation. So the people in the audience should vote on who are the best speakers. Somebody's a good speaker, bring them back again. If they're no good, don't bring them back again. But then you'd have interest and get rid of the 503 exemption, which castrates the church, doesn't allow them to say anything interesting, or they lose their tax exemption. That was done on purpose in the 1960s to castrate the church, and it worked. Okay, and people have small families now, so they don't want to send their kid to church. They don't want to send their kid to become a priest. Back in the old days when you got 10 kids, it wasn't a big deal for one to go. But that's why the church is so weak right now. And it's really almost like an underground movement, real Christianity, versus the church, just a piece of crap, okay? And it doesn't have to be that way. You could easily allow good men to speak in church and everybody would want to go again. Because it would be worthwhile. Rather than, some low IQ homos passes the basket around, we got to give them $1, okay? That's like what modern Christianity has turned into. Have you ever in your life seen a good priest? I mean, I've seen a few on the internet in the Catholic Church. I've never seen a good Catholic priest in my life giving a Mass. They're always stupid and boring and conformist and lightweights, okay? Why not have the best the best preachers speaking in mass. You'll make 10 times as much money if you have noble masculinity, men who have something useful to say. And let them talk about whatever's relevant. Let them talk about water filtration. Let them talk about nutrition. Let them talk about current events. Let them talk about whatever will be useful to the audience. So, anyways, hopefully Western civilization will survive. It's not doing well right now, but I hope it makes a comeback. Anyways, okay, hope you found that helpful.